The world was no longer the place it had once been. Earth, once a vibrant blue planet teeming with life, now stood on the brink of death. The oxygen levels were dropping at an alarming rate. It wasn't just a minor fluctuation, this was something far more sinister. Alien ships appeared in orbit, their immense shadows darkening the sky. They hovered silently, ominous and powerful, while they unleashed concentrated pulses of energy toward Earth's atmosphere. Each pulse drained more and more oxygen from the air, like a silent thief stealing life from the planet. In the span of just a few days, cities across the globe began to crumble. People woke up to find it harder to breathe, gasping for air as if suffocating. Major governments struggled to understand what was happening. The world watched in horror as entire populations fell ill, while panic spread like wildfire. Within a week, society's infrastructure began to fall apart. Hospitals overflowed with oxygen-deprived patients. Riots broke out in the streets, and the world's leaders were paralyzed, unable to explain what was happening, let alone stop it. The air was thinning. Slowly, but surely, the oxygen levels dropped to dangerous levels. Every breath became harder. Humanity's survival now depended on how quickly they could adapt or fight back. But no one knew how. The technology that Earth had depended on for centuries couldn't stop the alien ships. It was clear, Earth was not prepared for this kind of assault. Among the chaos, a small group of survivors emerged from the wreckage of a city, people who hadn't given up, people who still believed they could fight back. Among them were Captain Ryan Carter, a battle-hardened former soldier, and Dr. Emily Harper, a brilliant marine biologist. Ryan had seen the horrors of war, and now, he was about to see something worse, an alien race that could destroy everything he had ever fought for. Dr. Harper, who had spent most of her life studying Earth's oceans, now found herself faced with a terrifying mystery. What was happening to Earth's atmosphere? Was it a natural disaster, or was there something more sinister at play? The answer came when they discovered a message hidden in the data streams of an encrypted satellite signal, a message from the invaders themselves. The aliens weren't just random invaders, they were the Zorathians, a highly advanced alien race that thrived in low-oxygen environments. They had arrived on Earth not to conquer or colonize, but to harvest Earth's oxygen. Their planet was dying, and they needed Earth's atmosphere to fuel their intergalactic energy projects. They had been draining the oxygen from Earth for months, doing so slowly to avoid detection. But now, with their technology at its peak, they were draining the planet's air supply at an accelerated rate, and the Earth had no way of stopping them. Ryan's face hardened as he read the message over and over. "This can't be happening," he muttered, clenching his fists. Dr. Harper stood next to him, her brow furrowed. She was no stranger to scientific mysteries, but this was a nightmare beyond her comprehension. The Zorathians were using Earth's oxygen as a resource. They weren't here to invade in the traditional sense, they were here for survival, at the cost of humanity's existence. As the days passed, the world grew darker. Earth's cities, once bustling centers of culture and innovation, were now hollow shells. The streets were eerily silent, save for the sound of people struggling to breathe. In some parts of the world, entire populations had collapsed, their bodies falling like dominoes as the lack of oxygen suffocated them. Governments issued desperate pleas for answers, but nothing seemed to stop the decline. The Zorathians were in complete control. Earth had no defense. Ryan Carter was not one to give up. He had led soldiers through the most impossible situations, and he was determined not to let Earth fall. He quickly rallied a small team of survivors, including Dr. Harper, to figure out how to stop the Zorathians. Time was running out, people were dying by the hour, and the planet's atmosphere was nearing critical levels. The solution seemed impossible, but if they didn't act now, Earth would be lost forever. Ryan's team faced a new, terrifying reality. They could no longer rely on Earth's technology to fight back. Their only hope lay in using the very thing the Zorathians had overlooked, water. Dr. Harper, in a desperate bid to understand how the Zorathians were thriving in a low-oxygen atmosphere, came up with a radical plan. Water. The Zorathians, she hypothesized, would not survive in water. They had evolved to live in an environment so thin in oxygen that they couldn't breathe water as humans did. If they could find a way to force the invaders to encounter water, they might be able to reverse the damage they had caused. But how could they do it? The Zorathians were too advanced, and their ships were beyond anything humanity had ever seen. The first step, Ryan knew, was finding a way to infiltrate their stronghold and learn more about their plans. The Resistance had no space fleets, no advanced technology. They had to be clever, resourceful, and swift. The suspense built with every passing hour. Earth's cities were falling apart. Ryan's team narrowly escaped one such collapse as their hideout was discovered. The air around them became thinner by the second, making it harder to breathe with every step they took. The once bustling streets of their city were now eerily quiet, the only sound the rasping breaths of survivors. They couldn't stay much longer, the Zorathians were closing in, and if they didn't act soon, their world would be lost forever. Ryan's heart raced as he led his team through the darkened streets, the alien ships hovering above, their silhouettes blocking out the sun. The stakes had never been higher. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. "We're running out of time," Emily whispered as she glanced nervously at her portable oxygen tank. "We need to move faster." Ryan nodded grimly. The fight for Earth's survival had just begun, and the odds were stacked against them. But if there was one thing he knew, it was that humanity never gave up. And as long as he had breath in his lungs, he would never surrender. The planet was slipping away. With every passing hour, Earth's oxygen levels continued to plummet, and no one was sure how much longer the atmosphere could sustain life. The Zorathians, who had come from the far reaches of the galaxy, had set their terrifying plan into motion. The invasion was not simply about conquering Earth or enslaving its people, their objective was far more insidious. Ryan Carter, the former soldier turned reluctant leader, had spent days trying to piece together the enemy's strategy. Now, with the help of Dr. Emily Harper, they were uncovering the full extent of the Zorathian plot. As they sifted through intercepted data, a horrifying revelation emerged. The Zorathians were not just using Earth for its oxygen, they intended to terraform the planet to suit their own needs. They had been slowly siphoning the atmosphere for months, carefully advancing their technology to ensure that Earth's ecosystems could be replaced by their own. Ryan and Emily's hands trembled as they reviewed the data. The aliens had already made significant progress. The oxygen depletion was just the first step in their grand plan to strip Earth of its resources and replace it with a world better suited to their survival. They had terraforming technology so advanced that Earth would become nothing more than a lifeless husk, an alien world designed for their use alone. "They've been preparing for this moment for years," Emily murmured, her voice tinged with disbelief. "And they've been draining the atmosphere at a rate we couldn't even track." Ryan clenched his fists, a storm of anger brewing inside him. This wasn't just an invasion, it was the systematic destruction of everything he held dear. The thought of Earth being torn apart, its air consumed and its ecosystems wiped out, made his blood boil. But amidst the rising tide of despair, something inside him flickered. There had to be a way to fight back. There had to be a way to turn the tide. As Emily analyzed the alien technology further, she stumbled upon something that made her pause. A vulnerability. "Ryan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "they can't survive in water." Ryan's eyes widened as he processed her words. "Water?" Emily nodded. "Yes. The Zorathians are adapted to an environment with very little oxygen, but they're not equipped to handle water. It's their biggest weakness. If we can force them into the oceans, they won't survive." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. This was the breakthrough they needed. But the plan was dangerous. The Zorathians controlled the skies, their ships invulnerable to most of Earth's remaining weaponry. How could they possibly force them to the oceans, let alone submerge them in water? The answer, as always, was a desperate gamble. "We'll have to lure them in," Ryan said, his mind already racing with possibilities. "But we need to gather intelligence first. We need to know where the mothership is and how it's protected." Emily nodded. "It's risky. The Zorathians have energy shields that we don't fully understand. If we can't disable their shield, our plan is useless." It was a classic underdog scenario. Earth, on the brink of extinction, was relying on a handful of soldiers and scientists to turn the tide. They had no space fleets, no high-tech weapons, and no allies. But they had something far more dangerous: the will to survive. Ryan's mind wandered for a moment, thinking about the cost of this war. His mind went to his wife and daughter, lost in the early days of the oxygen crisis. He remembered the night they had perished, their faces pale, gasping for breath as the air around them thinned. He had held them as they died, his heart shattered with grief. That memory fueled his desire for revenge, and now, it would fuel his fight to save humanity. But it wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Every breath he took, every step forward, was driven by the need to avenge his family and protect the world they once loved. He had to do this. For them. For Earth. Ryan spent days training his team, preparing them for the dangerous mission ahead. They would need to infiltrate the Zorathian mothership, disable its energy shield, and then release massive amounts of water into their ships. It was an incredibly risky plan, but it was their only chance. If they failed, humanity would be wiped out, and the oceans of Earth would be the last witness to their demise. The resistance team, small but fierce, practiced their underwater combat skills in secret, using the last of Earth's remaining technology to simulate the conditions they would face. The Zorathians had technology far beyond humanity's wildest dreams, but they had underestimated Earth's resilience. Ryan's soldiers trained relentlessly, learning to operate in the ocean depths, adjusting to the pressure and the disorienting environment. Ryan's mind was always on his family as he trained. The thought of them kept him going through the darkest hours, pushing him to make impossible decisions. His men followed him because they believed in him, because they knew that his strength, fueled by grief and anger, was their greatest asset. Emily, too, had her own demons. She had lost people in the early days of the invasion, and her motivation to save Earth was personal as well. "We'll do this," Ryan said, rallying his soldiers one last time before their mission. "We have no choice. We can't let them take our world. We fight for Earth, and we fight for every life they've taken." As they set off on their covert mission to infiltrate the Zorathian mothership, the weight of the plan settled in. They moved under the cover of night, using the last of humanity's technology to mask their movements. The Zorathians were ruthless, and every step was dangerous. But they had no choice but to press on. They reached the mothership's perimeter, cloaked by the shadows of the night sky, and set up their equipment. The closer they got, the more the reality of their task hit them. The Zorathian ships were massive, their technology so advanced it seemed almost unreal. But they weren't invincible. There was a way in, and there was a way to strike back. They infiltrated the mothership's outer defenses, a series of high-tech shields that had so far protected the invaders from Earth's retaliations. Emily worked quickly, trying to decipher the alien tech and find a way to disable the shields. Time was running out, and the pressure was building. "Got it," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "I found a weakness in their shield. If we can overload it, we can bring it down. But we have to do it fast." Ryan's heart raced as he nodded to his team. "This is it. We do this, and we save our planet." With one final, coordinated effort, they released a surge of energy into the Zorathian mothership's shield generator, triggering a massive explosion that disabled the force field. The way was clear. It was time to flood the invaders with their worst nightmare, Earth's oceans. But as the team prepared to execute the final phase of the plan, the Zorathians were not going to go down without a fight. The real battle was just about to begin. The resistance was no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting back. After weeks of planning and preparing, humanity's last hope was now in the form of a secret weapon, something that could turn the tide of battle against the ruthless Zorathian invaders. In the depths of Earth's final military outposts, the Resistance scientists had developed a weapon that could submerge the alien invaders in their worst nightmare: water. The Aqua Bomb was a technological marvel, designed to flood Zorathian strongholds with dense, high-pressure water vapor. But it wasn't just any water. The Aqua Bomb worked by converting oxygen into vapor that could drown the Zorathians, forcing them to suffocate in their own terror. It was a weapon of desperation, and it was all they had left. Ryan Carter, the battle-hardened ex-soldier who had lost everything to the Zorathian invasion, was now the leader of the Resistance's most elite squad. His mission was clear: infiltrate the Zorathian fleet, deploy the aquabombs, and take down their strongholds before the invaders could fully terraform Earth. It was a suicide mission. Failure would mean the end of humanity, but if they succeeded, they might just have a chance to turn the tide. Ryan's team, equipped with cloaking devices and underwater drones, set out in the dead of night. They knew the Zorathians would be watching the skies, but no one expected them to be so heavily fortified underwater. The alien mothership, a colossal, menacing structure hovering just beneath the surface of Earth's oceans, was their target. As Ryan and his team approached the fleet, they saw the first signs of Zorathian defenses. Advanced AI-controlled drones zipped through the water, their infrared sensors sweeping the area for any signs of human activity. These drones were designed to detect even the smallest disturbance in the ocean's currents. They were fast, efficient, and relentless. But Ryan's team was ready. The underwater drones that the Resistance had developed were equipped with cloaking devices of their own, allowing them to move unnoticed through the aliens' high-tech security systems. The team maneuvered carefully, avoiding detection as they navigated closer to the mothership. But just as they thought they were in the clear, a warning flashed across their screens. Hostile drones detected. Prepare for combat. The next moments were a blur of action. The Zorathian drones, suddenly aware of the intruders, launched an attack. They swarmed like angry wasps, firing bolts of energy that cut through the water with deadly precision. Ryan's heart raced as he gave the command for his team to return fire. It was no longer a stealth mission, it had become an all-out battle. Underwater combat was unlike anything Ryan had ever experienced. The pressure of the ocean depths weighed heavily on their bodies, and the zero-visibility conditions made it difficult to track the enemy. Each time the team fired, their weapons sent ripples through the water, clouding the area and making it even harder to see. Explosions lit up the dark water as energy blasts from the drones collided with the Resistance's counterattacks. Ryan's elite squad responded with fierce determination. They fired harpoon-like projectiles that detonated on contact, sending bursts of underwater flame. Every shot mattered, as the Zorathians' drones were relentless. It was a high-stakes battle, where one mistake could mean certain death. Move, move, move. Ryan shouted to his team, urging them to push forward. They had to get to the mothership, there was no time to waste. The aquabombs were their only hope, and they couldn't afford to let the Zorathians stop them now. As they neared the mothership's massive hull, the team faced their most dangerous challenge yet: Zorathian sentries. These towering robotic guards were equipped with advanced weaponry and energy shields that made them nearly invulnerable. They were programmed to protect the mothership at all costs, and they showed no mercy. The team opened fire, but the sentries' shields absorbed every shot. Ryan knew they had to think fast. Flank them, he yelled, directing two of his soldiers to circle around the sentries while the rest of the team laid down suppressing fire. It was a risky move, but it was the only way they could break through the sentries' defenses. The tension was palpable as the soldiers moved in unison. They darted through the water, avoiding the sentries' deadly blasts, and one by one, took out the guards' power cores. With each sentry that fell, a small victory was won. But the price of those victories was high. The Zorathians were relentless, and Ryan knew they were running out of time. As the team finally breached the mothership's hull and entered the alien stronghold, the fight was far from over. The Zorathians weren't just going to let them plant the aquabombs without a fight. In the cold, metallic halls of the mothership, Ryan's squad faced wave after wave of alien soldiers. They had the element of surprise, but the Zorathians were quickly adapting. In the midst of the chaos, Ryan's close friend, Bonner, made a selfless decision that would haunt Ryan for the rest of his life. Bonner, knowing they were cornered, activated a final explosive device to clear the path and allow the rest of the team to continue their mission. The explosion rocked the mothership, sending shockwaves through the hulls and destroying a critical section of the ship. Bonner didn't make it out. Ryan's heart sank as he watched his friend sacrifice himself for the mission. It was a bitter reminder of the stakes. The fight wasn't just about saving Earth, it was about everything they had lost. Bonner's death, along with the faces of everyone Ryan had lost, pushed him to move forward. They couldn't fail. Not now. Not after all this. We finished this, Ryan muttered under his breath, gritting his teeth. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for Bonner. For all the people they had lost. For humanity's future. With Bonner's sacrifice weighing heavily on their hearts, the team planted the aquabombs at the critical points of the mothership. As they activated the devices, the countdown began. The moment the aquabombs detonated, the oceanic pressure surged through the mothership. The explosions sent massive shockwaves through the alien base, flooding the chambers with water. Sparks flew as Zorathian technology malfunctioned, unable to cope with the rising tide. Panic spread among the invaders as their air supply rapidly dwindled. The sound of their panic was deafening, as they struggled to adapt to the underwater assault. Ryan's team watched as the water level rose, flooding the hallways and causing the alien technology to short-circuit. The Zorathians' once pristine ships now looked like damaged husks, their systems failing as the water overwhelmed them. It was a moment of triumph, but it came at a great cost. The Zorathians, panicked and unable to breathe, tried desperately to escape, but it was too late. The rising water was their doom, and the aquabombs had done their job. The invasion was finally crumbling. Ryan stood, watching the devastation unfold before him. The sound of rushing water, mixed with the screams of the Zorathians, echoed in his mind. He could hear Bonner's voice in his head, urging him to stay focused. Humanity had fought back. But the real battle was far from over, the battle for Earth had reached a boiling point. With each passing second, the Zorathians were losing ground, but they weren't finished yet. Ryan Carter and his team had done the unthinkable, they had infiltrated the Zorathian fleet, planted aquabombs, and flooded their strongholds with water, forcing the alien invaders to struggle for survival. But just as they believed victory was within their grasp, the Zorathians unleashed their final weapon, a terrifying AI-controlled warship that threatened to undo all of humanity's progress. The aquabombs had worked. They had flooded the Zorathian motherships, crippling the invaders' ability to function. Their once imposing ships were now hulking wrecks, submerged beneath the waves. The Zorathian soldiers, accustomed to thriving in oxygen-poor environments, were choking, struggling to breathe as they scrambled to escape their failing technology. Ryan and his team had watched from a safe distance as the aquabombs did their job. The massive shockwaves reverberated across the ocean floor, and the floodwaters rushed through the hulls of the Zorathian ships, sweeping away alien soldiers, technology, and systems. It was a victory, but it wasn't over. Not yet. We did it, Emily Harper, the brilliant marine biologist who had played a key role in the plan, whispered in relief. The Zorathians are scrambling. They're on the brink of collapse. Ryan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. It felt like the end, but he knew better than to celebrate too soon. There was always a twist in war, a final card to be played. And the Zorathians, as deadly as they were, had one last move. Just as the resistance began to breathe a sigh of relief, the sky above them exploded with a blinding light. It wasn't a firework, nor a flare. It was a ship, no, a warship. A massive, AI-controlled Zorathian vessel, unlike anything they had encountered before, descended from the clouds. It was a dark, imposing silhouette against the night sky, and it was unlike anything Ryan had seen in his years of warfare. The warship was equipped with terrifying weaponry and the ability to terraform entire planets. But that wasn't what made it truly dangerous. What truly made it a threat to humanity was its ability to restore the Zorathians' oxygen supply, at a devastating cost. "We've got a problem," Ryan muttered under his breath, looking up at the sky where the warship loomed. "That thing could replenish the Zorathians' atmosphere, and it could do it faster than we can stop them." The AI-controlled warship was more than just a ship, it was a planet killer. It had the power to terraform Earth, turning it into an inhospitable, low-oxygen wasteland, one that the Zorathians could thrive in. The ship's advanced technology could convert Earth's oxygen into resources, fueling the Zorathian Empire for generations. And the worst part? Once activated, this weapon would release toxic gases into Earth's atmosphere, rendering it uninhabitable for humanity forever. Ryan clenched his fists. He couldn't allow that to happen. Not after everything they had been through, not after the sacrifices made. The warship had to be destroyed. There was no other option. "We have to stop that warship." "We don't have much time," Ryan said, his voice cold but determined. "Emily, what do we know about it?" Emily analyzed the data on her screen. "The warship is equipped with a planetary terraforming device. It can convert Earth's oxygen into a dense, poisonous atmosphere. It'll take a few hours to complete, but once it's activated, Earth's atmosphere will become toxic to humans. We won't survive." Ryan turned to his team, his gaze hardening. "Then we don't have a few hours. We go in now. We stop that thing before it's too late." The final battle began under the shadow of the Zorathian warship. The sky was thick with smoke, and the air hummed with the tension of the upcoming fight. Ryan and his team quickly boarded the last remaining fighter craft, the only ship capable of taking on the warship's advanced defenses. The Resistance's fleet had been decimated, and now it was up to Ryan's small team to complete the impossible. As the fighter craft lifted off the ground, the team could see the warship's massive silhouette, cutting through the clouds like a dark predator. The warship was equipped with heavy shielding, but it also had one glaring weakness, the energy core that powered its terraforming device. If they could take that out, the ship would be rendered useless. "All right, let's make this quick," Ryan ordered, his voice a calm contrast to the storm raging in his chest. "Target the energy core, and don't let up. We need to hit it hard and fast." The fighter craft roared into the sky, their engines lighting up the dark night. Below them, the warship's enormous size became even more apparent, its weapon systems already locking onto the Resistance's ships. A volley of energy blasts erupted from the warship, but Ryan's team dodged them with expert precision, flying between the blasts as they made their way toward the warship. Explosions erupted in the distance as the warship's AI-controlled drones swarmed around them. The fighter craft dove and banked, weaving through the onslaught of fire as they closed in on their target. The air around them crackled with energy, and every second felt like an eternity. Ryan's heart raced in his chest, but he kept his focus, guiding the ship toward the weak points in the warship's defenses. "Target locked," one of his team members called out, her voice trembling with anticipation. "Ready to fire." Ryan nodded sharply. "Do it." The fighter fired, sending a burst of concentrated energy toward the warship's core. The explosion rocked the sky, and for a moment, it seemed like they had succeeded. But the warship's shields held firm, the blast dissipating against its reinforced armor. The warship's weapons retaliated, firing back with increased intensity. "We need a bigger hit," Emily yelled from the back of the craft. "The shields are too strong. We need to hit the core directly." Ryan gritted his teeth. "We're going in. The fighter craft dove into the warship's path, dodging fire as they came in low and fast. The warship's AI drones closed in on them, trying to block their approach, but Ryan's team was determined. With expert maneuvers, they evaded the drones and positioned themselves directly above the warship's core. The fighter craft's weapons charged once again. "Now!" Ryan shouted. The final volley of energy blasts pierced through the warship's defenses, hitting the core directly. The explosion was blinding, sending shockwaves through the air and rocking the warship to its core. The AI-controlled ship shuddered, its terraforming device shutting down as its systems fried. The warship began to fall from the sky, spiraling toward the ocean below, its death knell echoing through the night. The battle was over. The warship was no more, and the Zorathians were left scrambling in the wake of their final defeat. The threat of Earth's terraforming had been eliminated, and with it, humanity had gained a crucial victory. But Ryan knew this war wasn't over. The Zorathians would never give up. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would come again. But for now, humanity had won. They had fought back against an impossible foe, and they had turned the tide. Ryan and his team watched as the warship crashed into the ocean, the fire and destruction lighting up the sky. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to breathe. They had done it. The world had a chance. But deep inside, he knew the fight was far from over. The Zorathians would come again, and humanity would have to be ready. The battle was over. The skies were finally clear, and the warship that had once threatened to destroy Earth lay in pieces, sinking into the ocean below. The last remnants of the Zorathian invasion fleet were scattered, broken and disoriented. The remaining survivors of humanity, battered and bruised, had won. But victory had come at a steep price. The Zorathians were defeated. It had been a daring, high-risk attack that had taken down the enemy's strongest weapon, and with it, the invaders' ability to terraform the Earth. Humanity had somehow managed to fight off a technologically superior enemy, defeating their warship in the final act of desperation. But despite this victory, it was hard to feel like true winners. The alien motherships had been flooded with water, and the resistance had executed a near-impossible infiltration into their ranks. Ryan and Emily had seen the battle through, leading their team through every dark corner of the alien fleet. And now, in the aftermath, they had to face the consequences of what had been lost. The Earth was recovering from the oxygen depletion caused by the Zorathians. The air was thick with the smell of ash and burning cities, the skies scarred with the remnants of battles fought in space and on land. There was no instant celebration, no victory parade. Only quiet relief and the recognition that humanity had narrowly avoided extinction. The resistance fighters who had survived were exhausted, emotionally drained, and deeply scarred by the sacrifices they had made. Many of their comrades had died. Some had sacrificed themselves without hesitation, like Bonner, who had given his life to save the team during the mission to disable the Zorathian fleet's energy shield. His death weighed heavily on Ryan's mind, a constant reminder of what they had lost in the name of survival. But even in the wake of tragedy, the survivors stood together. They were battered, broken, but alive. And that, in itself, was a victory. As Ryan and Emily led the survivors back to Earth, they passed through a shattered landscape. What had once been thriving cities were now mere husks of their former selves, the skeletal remains of towering buildings jutting up from the rubble like ghostly reminders of the war that had ravaged the planet. The survivors set up camp in a small coastal town, one of the few places left relatively untouched by the Zorathian forces. "We did it, Ryan," Emily said softly, her voice barely a whisper as she looked out over the horizon. "We stopped them." Ryan didn't respond right away. His eyes were fixed on the horizon as well, where the ocean stretched endlessly before them. It was a sight he had once found peaceful, but now, it felt empty. The ocean, the battlefield, the place where everything had started, was now a reminder of all the lives that had been lost. "I don't know if I can say we won," Ryan finally replied. "Not after everything." The cost of this, it's too high. Emily turned to him, her expression somber. We had no choice, Ryan. We did what we had to do. Ryan nodded slowly, taking in the view of the ocean once more. I know. But that doesn't make it easier. So many good people died for this victory. For a chance to rebuild. He looked back at the survivors, all of them weary but determined. I just wish they could be here to see it. Ryan found himself standing alone on the shores of Earth, staring out at the ocean where the war had begun. The ocean, which had once been a symbol of life and peace, now felt like a graveyard. The battles fought beneath its surface, the aquabombs that had detonated, and the alien technology that had once been invincible, all of it had led them here, to this moment of uncertain peace. He thought back to the early days of the invasion, when his world had been turned upside down. When he had lost his family, his wife, Sarah, and their young daughter, Emma, in the first wave of oxygen depletion. He remembered how they had suffocated slowly, the air around them growing thinner and thinner. They had died in a world that had lost its ability to sustain life. He had promised them he would make the Zorathians pay. And now, standing on the shores of Earth, he could finally say that he had kept that promise. But the victory felt hollow. The sacrifice of his family, and so many others, still weighed heavily on him. There was no joy in their deaths, no closure to be found. Emily approached him, standing beside him as she looked out at the ocean. Do you think they would have been proud of what we did? She asked softly. Ryan turned to face her, his eyes filled with sorrow. I don't know. But I know they would have wanted us to survive. They would have wanted us to fight for what's left. Emily nodded. We'll rebuild. We have to. For them. For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the wind carrying the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. Earth, though scarred, was still here. And so were they. The war had taken its toll, but humanity had survived. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in that small glimmer of hope, Ryan found a sense of peace. The Zorathians had been a force of darkness, a cold, calculating empire that sought to control and destroy everything in its path. They were a race of advanced beings who had mastered technology far beyond humanity's reach, wielding their power to suffocate and terraform planets for their own purposes. They had come to Earth not as conquerors, but as executioners, determined to wipe out every trace of human life and replace it with their own. But humanity had not been defeated. Despite the odds, despite the overwhelming power of the Zorathians, humanity had fought back. It was their will to survive that had ultimately triumphed, a force that the Zorathians had underestimated. The Zorathians had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to overcome, and to never give up. They had underestimated the strength of the human spirit. As Ryan looked out over the ocean, he thought about the larger message that this battle had revealed. Humans, though technologically inferior to the Zorathians, possessed something that the aliens could never understand, something that no amount of technology could replicate, the will to fight for their survival, no matter the cost. The Zorathians had their AI, their superior weapons, their fleets of ships, but they lacked the one thing that truly mattered, the desire to protect their home, their loved ones, and their future. The resistance, led by Ryan and Emily, had fought not for glory, but for survival. They had fought to preserve the Earth, to honor the memory of the lives lost, and to ensure that humanity would not fade into history as nothing more than a footnote. In the end, it wasn't the Zorathians' technology that had failed them. It was their inability to understand humanity's unbreakable spirit. The Zorathians had been defeated not by superior force, but by something far more powerful, the heart of a people who refused to surrender. The war was over. The surviving humans had fought bravely, facing the impossible odds presented by the technologically superior Zorathians. Their enemy had been defeated, and for the first time in months, the air felt a little less heavy. Earth was beginning its slow recovery from the oxygen depletion that had nearly wiped out humanity. Cities were being rebuilt, the skies cleared, and the survivors could finally breathe freely again. But there was still a sense of unease in the air, a lingering feeling that the victory was not the end of the story. In fact, it might have been just the beginning of something much darker. As the humans worked to restore their shattered world, Ryan and Emily's team stumbled upon something unexpected, a Zorathian artifact that had been recovered from the wreckage of the alien warship. Initially, the artifact seemed like just another piece of advanced alien technology, something that could help them understand the Zorathian ways and improve their own defenses. But when Ryan and his team began analyzing it, something far more sinister was revealed. The artifact, once activated, displayed a holographic message, a message that had been encrypted for centuries. The voice on the hologram was unmistakable, it was Zorathian, but the words were not those of the soldiers who had invaded Earth. This message was from a higher command, one that sent a chilling warning. Earth is not the target. You were only the first step. The true fleet approaches. Ryan watched the message in disbelief. His fingers hovered over the controls as he replayed the hologram over and over again. What did it mean? If Earth wasn't the target, then who was? And if these Zorathians were only scouts, what kind of enemy were they preparing for? Are they talking about reinforcements? Emily asked quietly, her eyes narrowing in concern. Ryan didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. His mind raced, trying to piece together the implications of this revelation. If Earth had only been the first target, that meant something much larger was coming. Ryan's heart stopped. The voice wasn't Zorathian. It wasn't human. The coldness in the tone sent a chill down his spine. Who is this? Ryan demanded, leaning forward in his seat, his hand gripping the comms controls tightly. There was no reply, just the sound of static again. Then, the screen went black. A cold silence filled the room. Emily turned to Ryan, her face pale. What does that mean? Ryan swallowed hard, a sense of dread settling over him. I don't know. But I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. He looked out the window at the recovering Earth below, the sky now clear of the smoke and debris from the battles. The world was slowly healing, but now there was a new fear to consider. Was this truly the end of the war? Or had they simply fought the opening battle in a much larger, more dangerous conflict? As the survivors of the human resistance began the slow process of rebuilding, something was stirring in the vastness of space. Far beyond the reach of human sensors, a massive fleet was making its way toward Earth. The Zorathians had been only a part of a much larger plan, one that had only just begun to unfold. Ryan's face remained grim as he stood in the command center, staring at the flickering screen that had displayed the chilling message. He knew deep down that this wasn't the end. There was more to come. He could feel it. A new storm was brewing on the horizon. The last few months had been nothing short of a nightmare. The Earth had fought back against a technologically superior enemy and had won, but at what cost? How long could they hold on to their victory? The Zorathians were retreating, but Ryan wasn't naive enough to believe that they were gone for good. The voice from the transmission, the one that had haunted him, echoed in his mind. This is only the beginning. A low rumble shook the room, and Ryan felt the ground beneath his feet tremble as if the earth itself was warning them of something much larger approaching. Was it the enemy they had just defeated, or was it something even more terrifying? Ryan, Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. The sensors are picking up something massive. Something we've never seen before. Ryan's eyes widened as he turned to the screen. The scanners displayed a fleet of ships, larger than anything the Zorathians had ever sent, heading directly toward Earth. The size and scale of the fleet were overwhelming. It was a force that dwarfed the Zorathians' invasion, a threat that could wipe out all of humanity in an instant. He didn't need anyone to tell him what this meant. The message was clear: Earth was not done fighting. The war was far from over. And this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. As Ryan and Emily watched the approaching fleet on the screen, the sound of distant engines echoed from deep within the Earth's atmosphere. The hum grew louder and louder, signaling that something massive was on its way. The transmission was clear: "This is only the beginning." Ryan clenched his fists. His gaze hardened with resolve. He had fought to protect his world once, and he would do it again. This time, though, it would be different. They were not facing an invasion of aliens, they were facing something far worse. But they had survived once. Humanity had proven that they could fight against overwhelming odds. And they would do it again. As the screen faded to black, the final sounds of distant engines echoed across the command center, sending a shiver down Ryan's spine. The fight for Earth was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning.